How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, November 21st, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual profile on Justin Tucker. The elite starting kicker for the Baltimore Ravens turns 32 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to put some focus on what he's been able to do over the tenure of his career from when he got to Texas to where he was playing and being automatic to the Longhorns to making it all the way to the NFL and establishing himself as one of the greatest NFL kickers of all time. He's already known right now as as the NFL's most accurate place kicker, and he also holds the NFL record for the longest successful field goal that he was actually able to kick this year. So when you put Justin Tucker's career in a nutshell, you get a sense as to why I put a kicker on this list when there's only two kickers on this list, and Justin Tucker is one of them. Just to give a sense of who Justin Tucker is, like I said, he's a place kicker, plays in the NFL. If you're unfamiliar with the place kicker position, he kicks 1 point extra points after touchdowns, and he kicks field goals. He has to kick it to the uprights, which are 10 yards behind the goalpost. And the longest that he's ever made was 66, and he's made a bunch of field goals in between, the 17-yard field goal from on the goal line versus a 66-yarder from all the way past midfield, just to give a sense of what he's able to do and give a sense of an idea for his impact on this team. Because another thing about having a good kicker is you can at least not worry about your kicker having to worry about, or have to worry about your kicker missing a field goal if you get good position. So, of course, that's at least something good to have on the back of your mind if you're Lamar Jackson. At least if you make it past the 30-yard line, you should be good to get points, which is a very assuring feeling if you have a kicker like this on your team. So, I digress. Getting into his background, he's originally from Houston, Texas, would find himself kicking at Westlake High School, which, if you're familiar with Texas high school football at all, is one of the bigger high school programs there that sells out more than a lot of college football games. However, after becoming an All-American at the kicker position, he would go on to play at the University of Texas. He went to play for 4 seasons from 2008 to 2011 under Mack Brown. This is while Mack Brown was still there. In Justin Tucker's freshman and sophomore season, he would find himself punting at Texas. In his freshman season, Texas ended up going 10-1, finishing with a top 4 rank after winning in the Fiesta Bowl and beating Ohio State. Just for a little bit of reference, I believe, and then following that game, before the I believes, in 2009, Texas would go all the way to the BCS National Championship before they lost to Alabama. And I believe that is the last time Texas has been in the championship really since then. That's the last time that they've really been ranked in the top 4 since Justin Tucker's sophomore season when he was still a punter on the team. Now, this transitions into his third year, his junior year with Texas, which would end up being his age 21 season. And in his age 21 season in 2010, he would play 12 games for a Texas Longhorns team that finished with a 5-7 record. They went on to lose. They won 8 less games than they did the year before. Regardless, Justin Tucker was perfect on his extra points, made all 27 of them, and he made 23 of the 27 field goals that he would go on to make for the year. Following that season, of course, he would come back for his next season at Texas. And then, of course, at Texas, as the starting kicker and the starting punter, he would go on to play all 13 games that Texas would play, he would play all 13 games in a season where Mack Brown and the Longhorns ended up going 8-5. They won 8 more games than the prior year, and their season ended up with them beating the unranked California Golden Bears at the Holiday Bowl. In Justin Tucker's senior season, he will go on to make 17 of the 21 field goals that he would have on the season, in addition to nailing all 44 extra points, which you're kind of expected to do at that point. But of course, following the 2011 season, which saw Texas win the bowl game, Justin Tucker, of course, was not taken in the draft, the 2012 draft, as it's been very rare that you've seen that you see a team use their actual whole draft pick on a kicker, even if he is Justin Tucker. He would get signed by the Baltimore Ravens and then work out alongside their original kicker, Billy Cundiff. After Tucker's preseason, the Ravens actually ditched their other kicker and decided to go with Justin Tucker for the season. In his debut season, he would go on to start with the Ravens in his age 23 season in 2012. He would go on to play 16 games in a season in which the Ravens would win the AFC North. This was the second year in a row that the team won. But of course, in Justin Tucker's first season, they would finish with a 10-6 record, winning 10 less games than they had won the prior season. In terms of making extra points, of course, Justin Tucker was perfect with his extra points. He would go on to just looking at how he fared on the year, he would make 30 of his 33 total field goals, making 91% of them. The only field goals he would miss were from 40 to 49 yards out, as he went 10 for 13. He was perfect within the 20s, perfect in the 30s, and he would make all field goals that he would take from 50 yards out. Once the Ravens went on to make the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Colts in the wild card round. They would end up beating the Broncos in second overtime off of field goals, of course, from Justin Tucker. They would end up beating the Patriots in the AFC Championship game before they ended up beating the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 47. And this was a very big game for them. And this would be the second time that the Baltimore Ravens had won a championship in their history. And this was, of course, Justin Tucker's rookie season, where he was expected to actually do a lot, and he actually did a lot, even though he failed to convert the first fake field goal of the Super Bowl of Super Bowl history. He would go on to win his only Super Bowl ring that he at least has to date, following his rookie season at Baltimore, which saw them win the entire title in his age 24 season in just his second year in football. In 2013, Justin Tucker would go on to be named a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro kicker. He did all this in 16 games where the Ravens went on to finish with an 8-8 record, missing the playoffs completely, all still in the John Harbaugh era. In terms of extra points made, Justin Tucker would make all 26 of the extra points that he would be expected to make on the season. He would go on to lead the NFL in field goals made and attempted, as he went 38 for 41 on the entire season. Inside 39 yards, he only missed one field goal. He was perfect from inside 30. From inside 50, he only missed two field goals on the year. And when you take what he did from 50 yards out, he made 6 of those 7 attempts. At the conclusion of the year, after Justin Tucker had been named a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro kicker in just his second year in football, the Baltimore Ravens, like I said, would miss the playoffs, and that would transition into Justin Tucker's third season with the team. In his age 25 season with the Baltimore Ravens, he would go on to play all 16 games for the third year in a row, in a season where the Ravens would finish with a 10-6 record, the same record they had when they won the Super Bowl. This time they finished third in their division, but still qualified for the wild card. In that season, Justin Tucker would find himself making every single extra point yet again for the third season in a row. He would be perfect with every field goal that he took inside 50 yards. As outside of that, he would eventually be 25 for 25. It's just that for all of his field goals outside of 50 yards, he ended up going 4 for 9. Still finished with a field goal percentage of 85%, which at this point in his career was his lowest conversion rate. However, at the end of the 2014 season, the Ravens would end up beating the Steelers, their division rival, in the wild card round before eventually losing to the New England Patriots, before the Patriots went on to beat the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. Of course, following that season, this would lead to Justin Tucker, of course, returning for what would be his fourth season with the Baltimore Ravens organization. In his age 26 season in 2015, he would play all 16 of the Ravens games in a season in which the Ravens would finish with a 5-11 record, winning 5 less games than they had won the prior season. In this losing season, Justin Tucker would still go on to make all of his extra points, yet again, continuing his 4-year streak of not missing one. He would go on to go perfect from inside of 40 yards as he made all 19 of those field goals. In the 40 to 49 yard range, he went 10 for 11 in all of his field goal attempts past 50 yards. He would end up going 4 for 10, as his longest field goal of the year was 52 yards. At that point, his career high was 61 yards from his 62nd season in the league. Even though he didn't lead the league in field goals made, he led the league in field goals attempt for the second time. And ever since 2015, he has not led the NFL in field goal attempts. But of course, in 2015, he would establish himself as one of the best, even though he still had to assert himself as a marksman from beyond 50 yards. Following that 2015 year, this would be, of course, following his first 4 years in football, he was already a Pro Bowler once, and he was already registered. He was already known as a first-team All-Pro kicker, only one time. This, of course, would change going into his 5th season with the Baltimore Ravens, where he was named an All-Star and a first-team All-Pro kicker for the very second time in his NFL career. Taking a look at how Justin Tucker fared in his age 27 season in 2016, he would play all 16 games in a season where the Ravens finished with an 8-8 record. They won 3 more games than the prior season, but they did not go on to make the playoffs. So in just a regular season, he would go on to make all 27 of his extra points. That would be half a decade straight of not missing extra points, which at kicker you're not expected to. He would go on to make all of his field goals within 30 yards. He went 10 for 11 from in the 30 yards or in the 30s. He went perfect 14 for 14 within the 40s and a perfect 10 for 10 within the 50s, meaning the only field goal he missed was was between 30 and 39 yards. He would lead the NFL in made field goals for the second and the most recent time in his career. Ever since 2016, he has not led the NFL in made field goals. He would go on to make 97% of his field goals, which even to date is the highest percentage of field goals he's ever made. And of course, at the conclusion of the season, like I said, he was named a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro, both for the second time in his first 5 years in the league. This would transition into his 6th year with the Baltimore Ravens, because in 2016, the Ravens did end up franchise tagging him, just to give a sense of how well they were. That was actually before his season in which he would be named first team All-Pro for the second year in a row. But of course, he would come back for his 6th season in 2017, and in his age 28 season, he would go on to play all 16 games yet again for a Ravens team that finished with a 9-7 record. They won one more game than the previous year, but for the 3rd year in a row, would go on to miss the playoffs. In 2017, the Ravens, or I guess, looking at how they fared in from extra points, Justin Tucker would make all of his extra points, continuing his 6-year streak. Looking at how he fared in field goals, he ended up going 34 for 37 on the year, converting 91% of his field goals. That is the 4th time in his first 7, or the 4th time in his first 6 years in which he's converted at least 90% of his field goals. He would go perfect from within 40 yards, as he went 11 for 12 in the 40s range, and he went 5 for 7 for field goals longer than 50 yards. His longest field goal of that season was 57 yards. But of course, at the end of the season, the Ravens wouldn't make the playoffs, and Justin Tucker would not make the Pro Bowl. But of course, following that 2017 season, this would transition into his 7th year with the season, his age 29 season in 2018. In that year, he would play all 16 of the games that he would play, in a season where the Ravens would go 10-6 and make the playoffs for the first time in 4 years yet again, as they won the AFC North for the first time since Justin Tucker's rookie season. But of course, within that season itself, Justin Tucker would go on to miss only one. He would miss his very first extra point of his NFL career, as he went 36 for 37. It might have been the year that they moved the extra point back, but I'm not completely sure. In terms of field goals, he ended up going 35 for 39. He ended up going perfect with all of his field goals from within 40 yards, as he went 21 for 21. He went 9 for 11 in all of his field goals in the 40s. And then he went 5 for 7 for all of his field goals that were over 50 yards, as his longest field goal of 2018 was 56 yards. At the conclusion of the season, Justin Tucker was not named a Pro Bowler, but in 2018 he was named, or I guess 2018 he was named to the first team All-Pro after being named to the second team All-Pro in 2017, the year before, for the very first time in his NFL career. This would be the third year in a row he would make an All-Pro team. And this being his fourth All-Pro team, alongside the fact that he's only made 4 Pro Bowls, should give you a hint as to how great of a kicker Justin Tucker really has been in that span. This transitions in, or I guess once the Ravens made the playoffs in 2018, they lost the very first game of that round to the Chargers in the wild card by 6 points. This was the very first, and this was also Lamar Jackson's debut season where he had to earn the starting spot for just for context. So, of course, this would lead into Justin Tucker's age 30 season, which would be his 8th season with the team in 2019. And in 2019, he would go on to start all 16 games in Lamar Jackson's MVP season, where the Ravens finished with a 14-2 record, the best record that the Ravens have ever finished with in their franchise history. Also in that year, Greg Roman would win the Assistant Coach of the Year, and John Harbaugh was named the Coach of the Year. Taking a look at how the Ravens fared, or how Justin Tucker fared within this season, he would be named a Pro Bowler for the very third time in his NFL career. He was named to the first team All-Pro for the 4th time, and he hasn't been named to the first team All-Pro since 2019, at least to this date. He was named, this would be the 4th consecutive All-Pro team that he was named to, not to mention his 3rd ever Pro Bowl that he was named to. And to finish the 2019 season, he would go on to be named to the All-Decade team for the 2010s unanimously. But looking specifically within his age 30 season itself, he would go on to make 57 of his 59 extra points made. This would be the only time in his NFL career he led the NFL in extra points made and attempted on the season. He would go on to make 28 of his 29 field goals, the only field goal that he missed coming in the 40s range. He would go a perfect 8 for 8 from the 20s. He went a perfect 9 for 9 from the 30s. And he would go on to make his only field goal over 50 yards, which was a 51-yarder. At the conclusion of the season, like I said, the Baltimore Ravens had qualified for the playoffs, and then they ended up losing in the very first round to the Tennessee Titans. And then following that 2019 season, this will lead us into Justin Tucker's most recent full season with the Baltimore Ravens. His 10th year, or I guess his 9th season with the club in 2020, his age 31 season. He would go on to play all 16 games in a season where the Baltimore Ravens would finish with an 11-5 record and make the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row with the 2nd best record in the division. And in that season, Justin Tucker would go on to make 52 of his 53 extra points made, only missing 1. He would go on to make 26 of his 29 field goals made, as he made 89 of them, or he made almost 90% of them. He was 1 field goal away from being 90%. He would go on to be perfect from all of his field goals in the 20s range. He would make 6 of his 7 field goals in the 30s. He would go perfect in the 40s, and he would go 3 for 5 for all of his field goals from 50 yards out, making his 55-yarder his longest of the season. Justin Tucker would go on to be named a Pro Bowler for the 2nd year in a row. He has never been named a Pro Bowler in back-to-back seasons. And in 2020, he was named a Pro Bowler for the 4th time in his career, and he was named to the 2nd team All-Pro for kicking, as he was named, as this is the 2nd time that he would actually get named for his kicking. I believe he was under Young Hui Ko. But looking at what Justin Tucker has been able to do over that span has really been amazing. And then once the Ravens made the playoffs, they would beat the Titans, the team that beat them the year before, by a touchdown, all before losing 17-3 to the Bills in the divisional round, before the Bills lost to the Chiefs, who lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, following that 2020 season, that leads us to where we are right now, as Justin Tucker is, of course, leading the way going into a very big matchup today for the Ravens, as the Ravens will the Ravens will have to face off against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. So I imagine that's what he's up to right now. But if you take a good look at where Justin Tucker is, he's a player that's consistently shown over the last 6 years that he's either the best kicker or the second best kicker in football, and just that consistency at such a crazy and unpredictable position like kicker is really a vote for, it's a vote of confidence for the Ravens. As long as he's been on the Ravens and as long as this dude is in the NFL, he's incredibly valuable to whatever team he's on, and for so far that team has only been the Ravens. But of course, with that said, I can't wait to see what Justin Tucker does moving forward. He is a kicker in his 30s, meaning he definitely has a decade left if he is healthy, of course. But with that said, I want to thank the Pro and College Football Reference websites, along with the ESPN and other websites that I needed in order to find the stats and the data in order to do this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 21 minutes of this piece. And if you ever get a chance to watch Justin Tucker, every time Lamar scores or every time he gets the Ravens within scoring, Justin Tucker's going to come out with his number 9, and he's just going to, and there's about a 90% chance that he's going to make that field goal. But of course, I want to thank everyone once again, and hopefully I'll have more for Justin Tucker next year. And once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on the 22nd for another episode of The Elite. And until then, thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.